Actually, brothers and sisters, our speaker, I've known him for over 3 decades already. Okay, that's how long. And I've known him when I was still in college. So we've been going, we've been meeting a lot during this time and even after that time. And some of a few important notes about our speaker is that he's a lifelong member of the Servants of the Word. Now, it is an international lay missionary brotherhood of men living single for the Lord, right? So he's a living single for the Lord. He's also one of the leaders of Ang Ligaya ng Panginoon Community. This is the mother community of the BCBP. Okay, that's the Ligaya. Now, he also does community work for the Asian region of the Sword of the Spirit. Now, this Sword of the Spirit is an international community of communities to which the Ligaya ng Panginoon is also a part of. And this one, brothers and sisters, very important. He is one of the original founding incorporators of the BCBP when Ligaya established BCBP as an outreach in 1980. So one of the founding incorporators. And he was also a former director of Ang Lingkod ng Panginoon. Now, this is a national outreach for single young professionals, of which I was part of and Saul was also part of, as well as a founding member of Christ Youth in Action, together with the late Mike Joseph. No, these were for college, for campus-based youth movement in the schools, in the colleges. So that's our speaker, brothers and sisters. So it's really my distinct honor and privilege to welcome tonight our speaker, Brother Francis Iturralde.
Thank you, brothers and sisters. Good evening. Ayong gabi. I'm privileged to be able to speak to you tonight. I was invited by Jojo to share with you some of my thoughts about brotherhood. So I thought I'm going to share this with you. See, for your very first teaching night of the year, you've chosen this topic particularly. No? So I'd like to share with you my thoughts about the meaning of this brotherhood. And the term is found in your very name, the name of your community. In other words, it is your identity. It is one that sets you apart or distinguishes you from other brotherhoods or other communities that may also refer to themselves as a brotherhood of sorts. For how different are you from the college fraternities, for example? How different will you be or are you from the Masons, the Lions, the Kiwanis, and other societies that call themselves brotherhoods? So I think that revisiting your fundamental call and identity at the start of this new year, especially that you have a new set of leaders, is a good thing to do. For this will not only remind you of why we are together in this brotherhood in the first place, but I think it will also push us to give our all to this call that we have embraced. So, what is brotherhood? Or what makes a group like the BCBP a brotherhood? Okay, so Joe, can we put on the PowerPoint, the presentation?
Yeah, I will share the screen now.
Yeah, share screen. Okay, that's the title of my presentation. We now go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we'll be talking about this brotherhood. My question is, why brotherhood? And I'd like to begin with that passage from 1 John 4, verses 20 to 21, By the way, brothers and sisters, if you go to Mass every day, the first few weeks, or the first week rather, of January, the first reading will be coming from 1 John, the first letter of John. So this passage, this particular passage, 1 John 4, verse 20, was part of the first reading, I think last January 7th. So I'd like to pick that out and start with this passage. It goes like this: If anyone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God, whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have from him, that he who loves God should love his brother also. Uh, if anyone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. I'd like us to note a few things about this passage. That the love of God, brothers and sisters, is necessarily also love of the brethren, or love of brothers and sisters. It's two sides of the same coin. But it's very striking, in fact, very shocking
On
to
ko
me,
na, off ko na.
that he will be called a liar if you hate your brother. Medyo malakas yan, ha? If anyone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. Would you like to be called a liar? Isa kang sinungaling? That is a very terrifying judgment. You know, Satan is the father of lies. And if you're a liar, then you're a son of Satan. But we are not of the same nature as Satan is, because in fact, we are made in the image and likeness of God. That is our nature. But this is very important. It's not enough to say you love God, because part and parcel of loving God is loving our brothers and sisters. If we do not love one another in the BCBP, is the BCBP then a brood of liars, or a brood of hypocrites saying one thing and behaving in another way? So what does brotherhood really mean? And if I'm part of this brotherhood, how am I supposed to love my brothers and sisters in the concrete? Let me talk now a little bit about Christian brotherhood. So I have to put that adjective before brotherhood, because there are many kinds of brotherhoods. And I'd like to mention three fundamental truths about Christian brotherhood. First truth: Christian brotherhood, brothers and sisters, is a personal and familial relationship of love. Personal, meaning hindi siya functional. It's not a functional relationship like a manager-employee relationship, or a leader-subordinate relationship, or even a teacher-student relationship, or a ruler-subject relationship. It is a personal relationship. It's not dependent on our functions. Christian brotherhood is a family relationship. It's a familial relationship involving all areas of life. Meaning to say, buong buhay natin, brothers and sisters, meron kayong mga blood brothers and sisters, di ba? Kahit na yung kapatid mo, ikinulong, no, because of some crime or whatever, kapatid mo pa rin siya. Hindi mo siya pwedeng ikahiya, because the connection that you have between you and your brother is a connection, a relationship that is because of blood. And blood, sabi nila, is thicker than water. And Christian brotherhood is somewhat similar to that. In fact, even more important, what unites us, what connects us with our brothers and sisters, is not just blood, natural human blood, but the very blood of Christ himself. It is by virtue of what God has done in Jesus Christ that he makes us one family under his fatherhood. God has no grandchildren. God only has sons and daughters, because our sonship and our daughterhood with him is because of what Jesus has done for us. We might have children, but our own children, they themselves will have to make their own personal commitments to be a son or a daughter of God. God only has sons and daughters by virtue of the work of his son Jesus. And so it is a family relationship, brothers and sisters. It is not, to be a brother is not an appointed position. It's not an elected position. It is by virtue of what God has done for us. This is a very important truth to remember. Second truth, Christian brotherhood, brothers and sisters, is not simply an organization, but it is in fact an organism. An organism is made up of living parts. There's a big difference between an organism and an organization.
Nakadug na ko.
An organization is put together because of a common structure, because of a common purpose or a common goal or advocacy, maybe even a common interest, a common project, maybe even a common enemy. You come together because of that. So there is a structure. Christian community, Christian brotherhood also has those kinds of structures, but the more important thing that unites them, or the members of that community or the members of brotherhood, are the relationships. An organization is put together because of those common structure. It is a structure that brings it together. Example lang, nung college kayo, you had all kinds of college orgs. And usually, walang mga members, puro officers. Pag natanggal yung officers, tanggal din yung buong organization. But a community or a brotherhood is brought together by personal relationships. And as an organism, it has its own life principle. And there is something naturally organic about the way it moves, the way it operates, the way it grows. You cannot legislate or simply force things on that organism. It has its own natural life principle. An organism also has a structure, but the structure is there precisely simply to support and in the service of those relationships of the parts. Nauuna ang relationships before the structure. Let me just give you the example of Paul. Paul's use of the body imagery or the analogy. You see this in different letters that he uses. No? In Ephesians, in Corinthians, he uses this body imagery. That, we are like one body, it's like a human body, different parts, and each part is actually of equal importance. Your toe cannot say that it is more important than the nose, or the heart cannot say that it's more important than your leg. No, everything is important. In fact, if your toe gets stubbed and it hurts, that it's not the case that only the toe is hurt. The whole body hurts. And that's true with Christian community. When a brother or a sister or a member of the community hurts or is hurting, the whole community is hurting. Every part is related to the functioning of the whole. That's why it is called a body. Third truth, and this I think is a common misconception. Christian brotherhood is not the same as the universal brotherhood of all men. Hindi yan magkapareho. That is not a Christian idea. Because Christian brotherhood is based on who God is and what he has done for us in Jesus. In baptism, we became part of that family of God. It is not because of our similar nature or constitution as a human being that brings us together. This idea of the universal brotherhood of men is a very secular concept. It is not Christian. It came out of the 19th century Enlightenment. It came out of the humanist movement of the Renaissance, and it's not therefore a Christian idea. The Christian God is a personal God, one with whom you can have a personal relationship with. He's not just a force like in Star Wars. He's not just a blob of impersonal energy, but he is a person who loves, a person who relates with us, who reveals himself to us. This is very important, brothers and sisters, because there's confusion here pag pinasok mo itong idea ng universal brotherhood of men. We are brothers because of Jesus Christ. Not just because we share the same humanity, And therefore, it is a special relationship. Outside of that relationship, a person cannot be our brother. We might share the same humanity, but still, he is not our brother. I'm talking here from a biblical perspective. If you study the Bible, you will notice that the Jews, the Israelites, have a special relationship together because of what God has done with them in establishing a covenant relationship with them. It's a special relationship. Hinirang sila ng Diyos. Out of so many other people, God chose Israel to be his special possession. So this is a special relationship, and therefore, we relate with our brothers and sisters in a special way, a way that distinguishes the brother from other men because of our relationship with him. And that's the reason why we have a special way of doing things, a special way of greeting, for example, a special way of relating. We don't relate this way to others outside of our Therefore, brothers and sisters, if this is the nature of our brotherhood with one another, next slide, please, our community with one another, then what brings us all in this community is love, the love of God and the love of one another. But isn't this just the greatest commandment? So what I'd like to do is to talk about a little bit about this love. What does it consist of? So let me talk about the love of the brethren. Love is another very much misunderstood word, especially in the light of its modern use, which is often romantic. What I placed there in the slide are uh, the basic words, the term as is used in scriptures. The Greek language, where the New Testament was written in, has three main words for love, namely eros, agape, and Philadelphos, all of which words are translated into one English word. But that English word is the word love. And so sometimes when you look at scriptures, uh, I'll give you an example. In 1 Corinthians 13, there's a definition of love there. The word love there is not eros. It is not even Philadelphos. The word love there is agape. Okay? So depending on how it is used in the Bible, then you have a different kind of meaning. The confusion sets in because the modern understanding of love is simply romantic. But we do have different kinds of love. I mean, your love of your mother, your love of country is not romantic love. So there are many different kinds of love. So we just want to make clear that when we talk about love of the brethren, it is not a romantic kind of love. The Christian understanding is that love is not simply emotions or feelings, but it is a decision, an act of the will, not just feeling good for or feeling good about each other. And therefore, Christian love is not dependent on circumstances, but on a decision to serve and love and be for the other person. I mean, the best example I can come up here with in terms of uh, demonstrating or defining or illustrating this word love is what you do in the marital vows, no, the wedding vows. You remember that you will love one another for richer or for poorer, in sickness or in health, and so on and so forth. In other words, whatever kind of circumstances you have, then you love. It is therefore an issue of commitment. Here's another very good illustration. If some of you have, I don't know if many of you have seen the movie or the Broadway musical called Fiddler on the Roof. If you have, there's a scene there where Tevye, the husband, the main, the father, is talking to his wife, and they're discussing love. The reason why they're discussing it is because their daughter was getting married to someone, to another man, to a man whom she loves. So the issue is, what is love? So, ang tanong ni in a song, no, it goes something like this. Do you love me? Sabi ni Tevye. Sumagot yung wife. And the answer of the wife is pretty striking. Love? Says, well, I have done this for you. So he washed dishes, she would wash dishes, would wash the clothes, etc. So she did all of the household chores. And then she says, if that isn't love, then what is? And then the husband, Devye, asks the same question again. But do you love me? And then the wife comes out with a litany of other things that she does for the husband. And then the husband says again, but do you love me? And then the wife comes up with another litany of things that she would do for the husband and for the family. The point here is love is not just a feeling. Love is acting. Love is action. And that's what exactly the wife was trying to say. I've been doing this, and these are all expressions of my love for you. So that must be love. And notice that in all the things that she said nothing about feelings or emotions, which is the main thing now in the modern world of how they would define love. So the word used in scripture rarely ever refers to love in the erotic sense. Rather, the word used is often agape or Philadelphus. I will now focus on the third meaning of love, Philadelphus, or the English translation of that is love of the brethren. Siguro familiar kayo dun sa the city of Philadelphia in the US. If you translate that, it is the city of brotherly love. That is their slogan. Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love. So, brothers and sisters, the BCBP is about men and women who have decided to love God and to love one another in spite of or given the circumstances in good times and in bad. And that is what commitment is all about. That in fact, I can rely and count on my brother and my sister because you are committed to me as I am committed to you. My commitment is only as good and as strong as your commitment to me. So each one of us is really the weakest link in a chain of love, so to speak. My love for the brothers and sisters is not dependent on how I feel, on my changing circumstances, on my moods, on my economic status, on my likes and dislikes. It's not dependent on my availability, on my preferences. Rather, it depends on my decision to commit myself and work for the good of the brothers and sisters. But as they say, love ain't love. Next slide. Till you give it away, or at least to express it in the concrete. Love has to be concrete, felt and sensed and experienced. Otherwise, how does one know that he is loved? In other words, love has to be incarnated. And this is what sacrament means. You have heard of the best-selling book by Dr. Gary Chapman called The Five Languages of Love. Namely, it's there in the slide, acts of service, physical touch, time, gifts, words of affirmation. This book became very popular in the late 80s till now because it helped people realize that love isn't simply feelings and emotions, but actions. Love is things that you do. And according to a recent survey, brothers and sisters, the most common and significant love language is the last one there, words of affirmation, which tallied, I think, about 30% of total, followed by acts of service, 28%, and then physical touch, 27%, and the last two are time, 10%, and gifts, 5%. So note how important the spoken word is, speech. Speech is the vehicle, the means by which we express and make concrete our love and affection to others. That brings me now to the last part of my presentation, which is life-giving speech. And the way we speak to one another the way we speak about one another. Part of loving the brethren is what we call fraternal encouragement. Fraternal encouragement. The word encourage comes from a French word cœur, which means heart. It comes from the Latin and Spanish word cor, which also means heart. So to encourage means to give courage, or maybe better translation, to give heart. And so to encourage, to give heart. The book of Chapman calls this affirmation, but put simply, it means to give life, to give strength to those whose hearts have grown faint or weak. O sa Tagalog, ng hina ang loob. So palalakasin mo ang loob, to encourage. And as we have said earlier, the best and most effective means of doing this is through our speech. Proverbs 18 verse 21 says, next slide, life and death are in the power of the tongue. The letter of James also compares the tongue to a rudder of a ship. Alam mo yung rudder, yung sa duluhan, sa the rear part of the ship, there's a little thing there, the rudder, and though small, it can direct a big ship. You find this in James 3, verse 4. The tongue is the source of both blessing and curse. With your tongue, you can praise the Lord. With your tongue, you can curse people. You can even curse God. So, that's why life and death are in the power of the tongue. So what I'd like to do is to look at some patterns of speech that can spell harm and even death. I'll just give 3 things. I could mention more, but I think these are the most common ones. Gossip. Gossip is talking about personal matters of other people's lives in their absence when we have no business doing so, especially in a manner that harms a person's reputation. Slander is talking about a person in a way that casts doubt upon a person's integrity and character. Now you might say, but totoo naman eh. Totoo namang babaero siya. Totoo namang nagnakaw siya. Well, yes, that may be the truth, but the truth doesn't give you the right to say things, because those things can ruin the reputation of the person you're referring to. And he needs to be able to defend himself. And when slander is being done, it's usually being done at the back of the person. So hindi niya alam, tatawag nating backstabbing. Another death-giving speech is negative humor, kantsawan, o teasing, o sa Tagalog, alaskahan. Meron pa tayong Spanish term dyan, cariño brutal. A form of teasing that is especially directed to a person's weakness or failure, all under the cloak or under the guise of fun or joking. So I can give a lot of examples here, but we don't have the time. So let me just move on. You can ask me questions later on. But let's move on to the other patterns of speech that bring life or that gives life. Graciousness, a way of speaking that imparts life to others. For example, when you're listening to others, complimenting the other person, and so on. Next, encouragement. Ito yun, affirmation, building speech, speaking in a way that, in a positive way. Even if things are not going well, you can say, it's challenging, but we can do it. That's a very encouraging thing to say. Positive humor as against negative humor. Wholesome and not colored in order to be funny. Alam ko, mahilig tayo sa mga green jokes, lalo yung mga lalaki. So that's not very life-giving, even if it's for the sake of fun or joking. Another one is honor and respect. We have expressions of honor and respect. We do this during birthdays, for example, when we honor a brother or a sister. But we don't have to wait for birthdays or special occasions to honor our brothers and sisters and to give them due respect. The last one is protecting one another's reputation. Let me just give you an example here. You know, let's say you hear somebody from outside of the Brotherhood and he says something bad about a brother in the BCBP, then our first attitude should be, or our first reaction should be to defend our brother, even if what was said is true. Yeah, well, sinabi niya, oy, alam mo, ganito si brother, yung brother niya sa BCBP, ganito, ganito, ganyan. Bago ka umayon sa kanya, before you agree with that person, you say, no, let me check that out, but I don't think he is capable of doing that. So you defend, you protect one another's reputation. This is very important, brothers and sisters, kasi ito yung sa slander. Ang slander is, if you look at the list of very major sins, no, in the scriptures, like sa Romans, for example, slander is one of them. Kahilera siya ng murder. Could you imagine that? In the list of major sins, I'm sure you have seen this in the talk on repentance and faith, di ba? Nandun yung listahan ng mga things that would separate you from God. Slander is one of that. It's a serious wrongdoing. Why? Because it's like killing a person. You see, a person's reputation is an extension of his life. And if you destroy a person's reputation, it's like killing him, destroying his life. Uh, a woman, for example, who gets raped, sasabihin ng babaeng yon, mabuti pang namatay na lang ako. Kasi wala na siyang honor na pwedeng ipagmalaki. Ganun katindi yun. That's why when we destroy somebody's reputation through slander, he cannot function well in society. So yun, let's be very careful about those kinds of things. Okay, just a few concluding remarks and then we can open it up to questions. By the way, after this, we'll have an open forum, and then after that, we'll go into breakout rooms and have a discussion. But also, I will even give you an assignment, a personal assignment that you will do over the coming week. Okay, let me just conclude this presentation. Brothers and sisters, the BCBP is a brotherhood. It is a community. It's a fellowship, a community of men and women committed to love the Lord. That's the first commandment, and committed to, as expressed in prayer and worship, and committed to love one another. The second commandment, expressed in service and speech and affection. In the BCBP, brothers and sisters, the most important position in BCBP is not to be an AMD or RCD or even the BCBP president. The most important position is that of a brother or a sister. Yan ang pinaka-importanting posisyon sa BCBP. Hindi yung breakfast head o yung chapter head o AMD or RCD. And the most important function in the BCBP is not that of leading or presiding over breakfast, organizing events, or administrating or teaching. Rather, it is loving the brother and the sisters. That's the most important function in the BCBP. Please keep that in mind, because that is really where community is all about. It is this love that distinguishes us from other groups. If we lose this, then we are not any different from other groups. We might as well be just like the Lions or the Kiwanis or the Rotary. I'm not saying we're better than them. No, that's not the point. The point is God has called us in a particular way. He called us to establish us as a community, as a brotherhood. And so just to end, I will go back to the first passage that I started with earlier. If anyone says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. Brothers and sisters, let us not be liars or live lives lying to God and to one another. Let us live in integrity. By the way, the word integrity comes from the word integer, meaning whole number, buo. So if you don't have integrity, it simply means that you're living a double life. you're doing something and saying something else, or vice versa. So let us live in integrity, for only then can we be a true brotherhood that is pleasing in the sight of God. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Now we can be open to questions.
Good evening again, Brother Francis. This is
Good
John.
evening, John.
Let's give a big round of applause to Brother Francis Iturralde. Thank you so much for that really wonderful talk and message. And I think that's perfectly timed for the beginning of the year, you know, how we really should love and love more each other, our brothers and sisters and everyone. So thank you so much. So just a few reminders before we start our question and answer portion. We'll probably devote about 20 or so minutes to the Q&A. You can just type your questions in the chat box and I can read them aloud. So it will be more orderly. Also, later on for our breakout rooms, I'd like to remind everyone to please place your discussion group number. And there might be some groups that are just that are very few, maybe one or two of you. So your unit leaders might merge you with other groups. So don't be surprised if all of a sudden your number has been changed. So once again, we're going to have a Q&A. So kindly place your questions in the chat box. So maybe let me ask the first question, Brother Francis, and I think the overwhelming message and word that you gave us was really love, to love more. And one word caught my attention, which is gossip, and you mentioned it. I know you didn't have a lot of time to devote on it, but gossip is sometimes sort of the easiest of sins to do. It's the one that, you know, it's also again something maybe that we enjoy doing. So can you tell us a little bit more about gossip and maybe how we should prevent it and how we should be reminded that, you know, if we're actually maybe not even conscious that we're already gossiping and that we should stop?
Yeah, it's you're correct, John. It's oftentimes unconsciously we gossip. No, I don't think any one of us Christians would actually do that intentionally. So this is one of those unintentional sins that we get into. Maybe because parang ano lang, habitual. Nakasanayan natin. We grew up that way, or we listen to, we became careless with our speech, or even mindless with our speech, the way we use our tongue. But gossip simply means talking about somebody, or somebody's life or affairs or whatever with another person, uh, where we don't have the right to, when we don't have the responsibility of doing this. So sometimes we would say, well, I need to discuss this because, well, yes, you can do that if you have the expressed authority to do so. For example, a pastoral leader or an action group leader needs to discuss with his leader what's going on with his member, for, so that we can get pastoral wisdom for how to handle some things. So pwedeng ganon. Pero normally what we would do is we will not do so, especially if what we're going to share will affect our perception or the way we would relate to the person, and therefore damage his reputation in a certain sense. See, even if it's true, we cannot just go ahead and say things. So, ganon yung gossip. And then, the best way to prevent that is when you hear something, you stop it right there. You don't pass it on. Parang ping-pong lang naman yun eh. So, pagka may narinig kang sinabi, oh, alam mo, si ganito, ganyan-ganyan. Okay, just keep it to yourself. Don't even respond to the other person who's saying things to you. Hindi mo pwede sabihin, talaga? Ganon. So, yan, you'll be drawn in already to that. So, that's the first, yung parang line of defense mo. Secondly, you're being more circumspect about the way you talk. This is not easy to do, especially if it has become your habit. but it will take some amount of uh, conscious decision on your part not to do this. It's like, before, some of us will say, dati-rati, ang pagmumura or cursing words, was second nature to me. But when I became a Christian, I knew I had to stop that. So you made a conscious effort not to do it. It will take some time. Hindi man automatic yun eh. So I think the more you have the Holy Spirit in you, and the more you're open to God's work in your life, pretty soon you'll also get rid of that. Just like getting rid of your cursing or your bad words and so on. So be patient with yourself. But I think the thing is, when you hear somebody speaking about somebody, then there's a be conscious and just stop it there. That's the way I would put it.
Thank you, Brother Francis. Question, how do we deal with members who have unpaid financial obligations to each other?
Okay, that's a pastoral question, and that therefore the response to that is it's a pastoral issue. I don't know how it is with BCBP, but we should have, I would say that you should have some kind of policies or the working guidelines on how to deal with borrowing and lending money with one another. Because those policies, those working guidelines should help you deal with these things. Now, the question is, how do you deal with somebody who has unpaid debts? No? Ano gagawin mo? So, well, it depends. It depends on a number of factors. Ikaw ba ang pinagkakautangan? Kung ikaw ang pinagkakautangan, no, it's your right, it's your duty to remind the person about it. No? Now, at least in our community, in the Ligayan ng Panginoon, we have a policy that says na if you're going to lend money to anybody a member in the community, then think of it not as a loan, but as alms. You're giving it away. So that if and when the person cannot pay it, well, binigay mo na sa kanya yun eh. Hindi sasama ang loob mo. Pag nagbayad siya, di okay, praise the Lord. Pero hindi siya nagbayad, praise the Lord pa rin kasi parang ibinigay mo na yon. Meron kaming attitude na ganon. So if you're not willing to take that attitude, then don't lend. Para walang samaan ng loob. Now, if the person borrowed money from another person and that person came up to you and say, tulungan mo naman ako kasi hindi siya nagbabayad. Tanungin natin muna kung sino may pastoral responsibility dito. I would think that should be the pastoral responsibility of the action group leader or whoever is the leader or the chapter head or whoever. But there should be a way of doing it. So yeah. When you talk about money, this is a little bit more, not complicated, but this is very important. Kasi brothers and sisters, if you want to destroy community, there are only two things that you can do, and it will guarantee to destroy the community. First is strong speech, slander one another, gossip about one another, and second, money. Mag-utangan kayo or mga ganon. So those two things you should watch out because those are the two things that will most clearly destroy a community. So yeah.
Okay, and thank you, Brother Francis. Another question, how can we defend a brother who is being slandered if what is being said is true?
Yes. Yeah. That's always been a question. The answer to that is you don't, even if it's true, you have no right to say anything against that brother, even if it's true. The thing that you do, especially if it's your brother, brother mo sa BCBP, yung ini-slander. Let me put, para lang ma-clear ang example. Let's say you, John, and myself. No? And then you hear Jojo Veloso saying bad things about about John. So Jojo tells me something about John that casts doubt on the reputation of John. Now, sabi ni Jojo, totoo naman yun eh. Talaga naman ginawa niya to. Talagang nakita ko siyang ganyan. Okay, then I'll take that, but I will stop it there. I mean, hindi ko na yan ikakalat. Ang sasabihin ko kay Jojo, what I'll tell Jojo is this. Okay, Jojo, I will verify that, if that is really true. But right now, Jojo is my brother. John is my brother, and therefore, I will have to check it out with him first. I will not believe you right away. That's a way of protecting, even if you have a suspicion that John really did something stupid. But Jojo has no right to slander John because it will lessen the life of John in a certain sense. Kasi when you look at slander is one of those actions that partake of the nature of murder. Mabigat siya, mabigat. It partakes of the nature of murder. If you see that in the list of sins in Romans, for example. So, because you destroy the person's character. Imagine your brothers and sisters, you borrow money. And this is true in the Chinese community. You know this very well. Pag nasira ang reputation mo na hindi ka nagbayad at ikinalat siya na, hindi, it's si Francis, hindi nagbabayad dyan. Hindi ka na makakautang sa Chinese community. Diba? Well, it's the same thing. If you say something bad about this guy and everybody, I mean, this is really true, especially now with the social media. Just so many things going on and nobody has hindi sila makapag-defend kahit sa social media. Whenever you say something about a person, you have to give that person, a chance to defend himself. And slander and gossip do not do that. That's why it's wrong.
Thank you, Brother Francis. Another question, how can we sustain the fire to love our Lord and our brothers and sisters as time goes by?
Familiarity breeds contempt. That's what you're coming to say. Well, yes and no. I think, brothers and sisters, as you grow in your relationships, your relationship with your brother and your sister, as it deepens, this is just like your own friends, no? They deepen. They're not necessarily always nice and lovey-dovey or warm, etc. But you know that there's a certain depth, a depth that has grown because of time. And that's true with barkadas. No? I still go out. My best friends in college, we're still together. Even if we have different directions. I'm part of this community. I'm part of this brotherhood. They appreciate that. They agree. They respect that. But we don't see each other often. Siguro twice or three times at most in a year. But we know that there's a depth of relationship that, So I think the question is, how do you grow in your relationship? The more you are connected with each other, the more you spend time with each other, even if it's only online, I think that will really make your relationships grow. The more you're able to help each other in practical ways and so on, you're investing things. You're investing the way we call it in communities, we're wasting time with one another. Kasi bakit waste? Kasi hindi siya productive in terms of measurable results. Unlike, for example, in the office, di ba? Sa company, they measure your output. But building relationships, bonding, wala namang measurable output. Ang pinaka-output niyan, yung nagsistrengthen yung relationship mo, but you can't even measure that. So it's a waste of time in a certain sense when you hang out with each other, spending time, uselessly with one another. But that's how barkadas grow, di ba? you just hang out with each other, and then after some time, there's really some bonding. Now, by the way men bond and the way women bond may be a little bit different. Men band together. The many, the men like to may herd mentality ang mga men. They band together. The women, they prefer smaller groups, maybe even just small one or two, very strong relationships. Yeah, so spend time with each other, connect with each other as much as you can, and yeah, that's the way I would put it. But ako personally, brothers and sisters, when I became part of community, uh, my network of relationships changed. The people I go out with now, the people for example, I have a free time. The first people I will come to think of if I want to watch a movie are brothers and sisters in the community. No longer my dating mga friends. So nagbabago yan eh. And you will see that the commitments that you have are really strengthened. Especially if you go through the same difficulties together, challenges together. The more open I am to my brothers and sisters in terms of my personal life, the more they can talk into my life and I can talk into their lives. Those things strengthen our relationships.
Okay, thank you, Brother Francis. Another question. What if the correction of a brother or sister is not done in a manner fitting for those in community? Meaning instead of directly talking with a brother or sister concerned, it's done through other people. What should be done?
The issue here is the content and the form of the correction. So I can give you a whole talk on giving and receiving correction. But you need to distinguish between what's the content of the correction, ano yung laman, bakit sinasabi yon, meron ba talagang objective na ginawa kang mali, and the other one is the manner by which it was done. So oftentimes, tama yung laman, yung content, what we are reacting to is the manner. So let's try to distinguish the two, because sometimes it is not really the content that we're reacting to, but just the manner. If the manner of correction is not good, or maybe is faulty, or it could be a better way of doing things, then I would say you correct that person. But the correction is to do with, don't do it right away kasi ma-obvious na nagre-react ka eh. So, pakinggan mo muna yung sinasabi. Pagkatapos, after some time, then you call his attention, say, I appreciate your correction. That's really true. And so I'm sorry about that. But it will be better if you did it this way. Parang ganon. So, I think ano yung sinabi mo dyan kanina, yung what's the manner again? Can you repeat that? That's the second part of the question.
Meaning instead of directly talking with a brother or sister concerned, it is done through other
okay.
people.
All right. That's correct. Tama yan. Hindi dapat ganon. If you want to correct a person, first go to the person. Whatever. So, by the way, there are many different kinds of correction that can be done. Unang-una, what are you correcting the person about? Is it a matter of righteousness? Or is it a matter of just, you might say, opinion? Or, so, iba-ibang levels yun. So, ang maganda dyan is, first of all, to determine ano yung content ng correction, ano yung kino-correct. And then, sometimes kasi it's also good, it's also better to go to another person rather than to the person directly for some pastoral reasons. But normally, you should just go straight and correct the person. Nasa scriptures din yan kasi, before you go worship God, if you have anything to say against the other one, then you work it out first. So this is the same injunction. If you see that this person has done something wrong, then you go straight to him. Now, if it's a question of opinion lang, it's not a righteousness issue, then you have to be a little bit more circumspect because you cannot correct something that is not wrong. What do I mean? Okay, there are three kinds of things, issues of righteousness, then issues of good or bad, and issues of appropriateness. What's proper, what's not proper. Let me give you some examples. Um, Issues of righteousness are those things that violate the commandments, the teachings of the church, the teachings of Jesus. Objective yan. There is an objective standard or criteria against which you know whether something is right or wrong. It is not a matter of opinion. The second one can be a matter of opinion, namely what's good or what's bad. I'll give you an example. Is drinking, is smoking right or wrong? No, it's not. There's nothing in scriptures that tell you that these things are right or wrong. Even the church will not say that drinking is wrong. The only time that drinking or smoking is wrong is when it becomes an abuse, substance abuse, because abuse means that you lose your free will in your actions. Hindi na ikaw yon, no? You've lost your freedom to act that way, to act in the right way. But the third one, which is often the bone of contention for many of us, what's proper or improper. I'll give you an example. You decide you'll have a BCLP, in September. Then part of your council says, no, let's do it in July. Or somebody says, no, let's do it in December, etc., etc. So, matters of opinion yan. Diskarte ang tawag. Walang mali at tama doon. Walang ang good or bad dyan eh. Should we wear, for our anniversary celebration, should it be a Hawaiian theme or should it be intergalactic theme? I don't know. So, pwedeng pag-awayan yon. Pero hindi nga dapat kasi wala namang tama o mali dyan. So, you have to decide and discern whether what you're correcting is an area of righteousness, an area of good or bad, or an area of just opinion or propriety. So, if you know that, then you would know how to correct. So I will not go to a person and say, oy, mali yan. Huwag kang mag-aral ng medicine. Dapat architecture ka, mali yan. Or you can say, huwag mong pakasalan yung taong yan kasi dapat ang pinakasalan mo ito. Ganyan. Hindi, mga diskarte yan eh. I think you know what I'm trying to say here now. So there's objectively, may mga objective norms tayo sa righteousness. So sa good or bad, by agreement yan. So yon. So I will go directly to a person to correct a person, especially if it's a righteousness issue. I know that something is wrong. But then I have to decide, I have to be sure that it is in fact a righteousness issue. If it's just a matter of good or bad or my opinion, then I have to be more circumspect before correcting the person.
Okay, thank you, Brother Francis. And I think we're good for just one more question, so we can have a good discussion with our sisters and brothers later. So last question, if you're the object of slander, when do you say enough?
If you are the object of slander and you know who is slandering you, then you can go straight to that person and say, you don't have the right to say that. Now, whether he or she will accept that, wala ka ng doon, wala ka ng, you don't have any power anymore. You can only do so much. It's really up to him. It's between him and God. You've already done what you need to do. Okay, but you don't hit back by slandering him. So let him slander you. Tell him you should stop that. But if he doesn't stop, then you don't have anything. Wala ka na magagawa dun eh. Now, if you try to defend yourself, you can do that also. But in defending yourself, do not slander him back. Parang gano'n. So, you just take it in. I mean, ano yan eh. Ang model natin dito, brothers and sisters, si Jesus talaga eh. He just took it in. Kasi kung hindi, ping-pong lang yan. Pabalik-balik lang. So, ang ginawa ni Jesus, kinuha niya yung bola ng ping-pong at inako niya. At ipinako niya sa krus. So ganun lang talaga yun. You cannot, as a Christian, you cannot fight evil with evil. The only thing that you can do is fight evil with good. Be good to him. Pray for him. That's not easy to do, no? It's easy, so easy for me to say, especially if I'm the one that's hurt and slandered and maligned. No, your heart bursts with feeling, the injustice of it all. But yun ang ibig sabihin siguro ng martyrdom.
Okay. Once again, thank you so much in behalf of the BCBP Cebu North community. Let's give a big round of applause. Brother Francis Iturralde, thank you so much.